Hey everyone, I'm Rob Wendell with Lake Michigan Angler. Today we're aboard the Breezy1 with Captain Shawn out of North Point Marina. Captain Shawn's going to share with us how to fish with downriggers for trout and salmon.
Hi everyone, Captain Shawn here from Breezy1 Sport Fishing, as well as Magnum Metals Downriggers and Rod Holders. Today we're going to be touching the subject of how we fish with downriggers on Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes in general, sharing our tips and tricks with you. One of the techniques that we like to do, we've been using for many years now, is we use the Scotty releases. We really like to use them on a tether cord on the back of the ball. The advantage to using it on a tether cord is when the rod is loaded, the release will actually become vertical. And when the fish bites, it'll telegraph into the tip of your rod. So you'll be able to see when you get smaller fish bites, or you'll even see the fish bite before it actually trips the release from the angle of the rod holder going up and down with the angle of the release. Another reason we like using these is for a lot of your dodgers and whatnot, if you're running it close to the ball, we can judge the speed of our lure by the pulse of the rod tip as the release goes up and down. It helps us judge our speed down deep. Another trick that we like to do, I see a lot of novice anglers out there, is they'll fish with their rod holders more in a straight up position. We prefer to keep everything low to the water. Try to keep the rod a little bit more horizontal with the water. It gives you a little bit less blowback, makes it a little more netting friendly when the fish come up in your spread. Another thing that we like to do when we're deep water fishing like we are now, we like to step it up to the 20 to 25 pound weight class. I know there's a lot of old timers out there that think 10, 12 pound weights is all you need, but it's not true. When you're running those 10, 12 pound weights, we've actually done testing, running them side by side on this boat. What you'll have is, especially if you're fishing the bottom, and not all fish on the bottom are lake trout, we've actually been catching a lot of kings lately on the bottom because of the warm water, but fishing with those light weights, you got to let so much line out, you get so much blowback, that ball's not actually bouncing the bottom, it's dragging the bottom by the time it touches the bottom. So using the heavier weights, you get less blowback, and you can actually get that weight to hover right off the bottom or skip the bottom rather than dragging across the bottom. Another subject that's asked a lot about is how far should I run my bait behind the ball? With conditions like this, you've got warm water, clear water, bright sunny skies, we like to stretch things out a little bit further because the fish are very lethargic because of the warm water, middle of the day, high sun, calm conditions. So we like to get things in a stealthy presentation, meaning minimum of 20 feet, sometimes as much as 100 feet behind the ball. Now in the springtime when the water's cold and the cohos are what we call wolf packs, we'll actually fish the baits as close as 2 to 6 feet from the ball and even put our dipsy right next to that rigger, because what you'll get is you'll trigger a feeding frenzy. You'll actually get a coho that'll bite the rigger, and then his buddy will be right next to it by the dipsy and say, oh look, he's eating, I'm going to eat, and you'll actually start a feeding frenzy. That's in the springtime when the fish are really aggressive and in their wolf packs. But right now when the fish are kind of lethargic, lazy, warm water, warm conditions, it seems to really help to fish more of a stealthy presentation. Now we're going to talk a little bit about ball types. Everybody has their opinion on what type of ball tracks better through the water. My opinion, I had an old timer tell me this years ago, what is the shape of a front of a submarine? The government can make it any shape they want. They choose to make it round. So therefore, I feel the round balls, especially on my back riggers, track way better through the water. You don't get that cable sway back and forth. You get a nice true track. With that being said though, I like running the pancake weights on the side so I can bend the fin, create a little more spread, and get them away from my round balls that are directly off the back of the boat. A lot of people say you can't bounce pancake weights on the bottom. Later on, I'll show you the front of my pancake weights. I bounce them on the bottom all the time. We're hooked up with our bottom bouncing rod here. Rob from Lake Michigan Anglers, keen eye, saw it before anybody else.
He chummed and he got a fish.
He chummed and he got a fish.
Beautiful action shots and chum at the same time.
Gotta do it again for the rest of us.
Say it's a little Lake Trout, get all the way to the boat. Oh, it's a little king.
As you can see, the other benefit using the Power Pro on the downrigger is when you use the mono, this fish came off the bottom in 194 feet of water. Using mono, that fish would come up to the surface way behind the boat, which would give you better odds of losing the fish, because now you got that dodger swinging back and forth on the surface, wiggling on that hook in the fish's mouth. Using the Power Pro, that fish stays deeper in the water column a lot longer, comes up a lot closer to the boat, and it seems like our landing percentage is also greatly increased. Silverfish.
Oh, nice.
Now we can talk about bouncing the bottom, right?
Yep.
Got her, buddy. I showed you guys less than 10 minutes ago, bouncing the bottom in 196 feet of water. Everybody thinks it's for lake trout, and we pulled up a coho off the bottom with a spinning low. Another popular stealthy technique that we use on my boat a lot is running sliders. Sliders are basically, we just take a piece of mono, roughly 4 or 5 feet long. You just want to make it long enough so you can net the fish when it comes to the back of the boat. But it's basically a swivel on each end. We really like to run it with a spoon. I wouldn't recommend running it with a flasher fly. And we really like to run it on a rod where there's also a spoon on the bottom side so the flasher fly doesn't get all wrapped around your slider. And basically with the slider, we just take it, clip it onto the line, and this is what they call a free float slider. We'll just take it, throw it in the water, and the theory behind it is you have a big bow in your line going down to the weight. That slider will slide down the line and stop at the bow and just hover there roughly around halfway to a little more than halfway down. And the key is when a fish hits your slider, it's pretty obvious to tell. You'll see the rod will be bouncing and shaking, but doesn't usually trip. You usually have to trip it because they don't have enough force because they're in the bow of that line. So you have to trip it, burn the reel as fast as you can until you get that slider to bottom out. Another good tip is you really want to keep your rod loaded as much as possible. You kind of learn that fine line of where to load it. We got our drag set, and we really like to load that rod to minimize how much slack you have between your rod and the release. It'll definitely help your hookup percentage and as well allow you to see the bite much quicker than you would if you had a bunch of slack in the line. Normally for downrigger rods, we like to run like a 7-foot, one piece, kind of a medium action rod. We prefer a little bit lighter tip. We like running 17, 20-pound test. That's for most applications. But when we're fishing deep, like we are now, and running the big 11-inch paddles, I would say 9 to like the 11-inch paddles, we'll actually take a beefier rod, like the Shimano Tellura 9-foot Dipsy rod, or even the Okuma copper lead core rods, and we'll put an 800 series reel on it, load it up with braid. And the reason we like doing that is because the braid will give you less blowback, so therefore you can see the bite even better. And at the same time, when you're fighting those lake trout or fighting the kings from way down deep, you get much more of an intense feeling fight for our customers with that braid. They feel more one-to-one with that fish rather than using mono that has 220 to 280 feet of line out. They really enjoy the fight of the braid over the mono. And one of the calls that we get from at Magnum Metals at the shop a lot is, my downrigger hit the bottom. The wire jumped off the side. My downrigger hit the bottom, the wire jumped off the side of the spool, and now the whole spool is destroyed. Cable got wrapped around my counter, broke my counter. We hear it all. I'd like to show you the proper technique. It's all about just paying attention to what you're doing. First, I'll look at my fish finder, see how deep I am. Right now we're in 187 feet of water. So I know when I start getting close to 187 feet, I need to start paying attention to my downrigger, my counter, feeling the downrigger, feeling the rod, and telling when it hits bottom. So basically what I'm gonna do is open the spool. I'm gonna slowly start sending it down. Now I know I'm getting close, so I'm gonna start feathering the switch. And there you go. Once I hit bottom, I can see a little bit of slack come up in that downrigger cable, and at the same time with my hand on the switch and on the downrigger, I can feel the load lessen on the downrigger, meaning that the weight touched bottom. And what we'll do a lot of times is let that ball hit bottom. Give it 20, 30 seconds because it's going to rise a little bit. And then you can usually come back, drop it down about another, depending on speed and current, you can usually get about another 7 or 8 feet on it and it's going to hit bottom again. Doing that technique, I can promise you, you will always stay within 2 feet of the bottom. So there's a lot of myths out there where guys say you cannot bounce bottom with a pancake weight. This weight here is about 7 years old and there's living proof. I bounce bottom with this weight all the time. No issues. How we like to do it to maximize our fish hookup ratio on the Breezy1 is when a fish hits, instead of just running back and grabbing the rod and pulling it out of the holder and start reeling, we like to run back to the rod and just start cranking right away until we're loaded up on the fish, and then we'll slide the rod out of the holder, keep your rod tip up at a nice steady angle, and just enjoy the fight.
Back up yet or not yet? Stay right there.
Barely hooked. So now stop rowing, just walk straight back. Don't look no.
I hope we're able to teach you something this afternoon here on the Breezy1. If you guys are interested in booking a charter, you can reach us at Breezy1Charters.com. For any other tips and tricks that you may want to know, you can reach out to Rob at Lake Michigan Angler. He's very helpful, very insightful. We all feed him information on a daily basis. And if you're interested in any of our Magnum metals, we do have a website at magnummetals.com.